Wow, it's already 2 weeks into 2014. This is crazy. I was planning to do this video somewhat after Christmas, and I've kind of been piecing it together as I can, but haven't had a ton of time. You know, you gotta work when you got work in this economy. You know how it's going. But I finally am gonna hopefully be able to get it finished up here and posted, so I'm excited about that. Um, it's been a great year. I've read a lot of really great books. I've learned so much about comics. For those of you guys who don't know, I kind of started collecting. I think I bought my first set of Ninja Turtles comics last October 2012. So it's been just over a year. But really, like my pull list started getting full in January last year. Um, I was only kind of collecting Amazing Spider-Man, and once that dropped, I had to start looking for some options. All the Marvel Now stuff was happening, so a lot of good jumping on points. And I read some good books, some not so good books. And what I'm going to do in a little bit here is I'm just going to go through all the books I've read this year, tell you what I liked, what I didn't like, and give you some opinions. And I'd love to hear what you guys thought too. There's a lot of new stuff coming up with the new Marvel Now and things like that. They're trying to bank on these number ones by calling them point ones. I don't really get it, but yeah, they're actually. I've been looking at the previews. There's not that much I'm that interested in. I might pick up the Winter Soldier series. That seems kind of cool. I heard a rumor that Amazing Spider-Man is coming back in March. So if Slot's not on it, and please, I hope he's finished. I rant on Slot a lot. I don't hate him. I'm not that into him. So I'd like to see some fresh blood on Spidey. Get Peter back. Um, yeah. So there's some interesting new books coming out. We'll see how it goes. Um, yeah. So thank you guys so much for this year. All these guys who've subbed over the past 12 months or whatever. Your support is really, really amazing and really cool. I appreciate anyone taking any time to watch any of my videos because there's so much stuff out there. There's so many guys out here doing comic videos, and so many of them are so good. And mine are just kind of these average, normal things I sort of do when I can. I don't have like the production value of, say, a Greco Fabulous type video, but you know, I do my best, and I appreciate you guys when you watch and when you comment because as we all kind of know as serious comic guys, there's something about being a comic guy that a lot of your friends or whoever people you know in the real world, there's very few people who are really like that. I think that's what makes YouTube and the internet and all that so neat is all of us can come together, scattered around the world, and we're kind of like mutants. We're sort of neglected and rejected. People are fearful of us, but we really just want to do good. And it's cool when we can kind of cerebro it up with YouTube and all come together and connect a little bit and get to know you guys. So I started on YouTube just because I want to learn more about comics and some of the history and some interesting books and things like that as I started getting more interested in collecting keys. And I ended up sort of becoming part of this community, which is really neat because I didn't really plan on that at all. So it's been great. I met some really nice people here, and I'm looking forward to getting to know a lot of you guys more. And there's always new people coming, so it's exciting. So with that said, I guess I'll say happy New Year and cheers to you guys, and enjoy the video. So I got some more keys coming up here after this video. Probably in the next couple days, I'll drop a video with some new key issues. Got some pretty nice ones I'm excited about. And if you haven't seen my keys from this year, check out the video. It's on my main video on the channel. It just shows all the keys I picked up this year, basically, in 2 videos. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Happy New Year, and looking forward to watching all your videos. And another great year. So, take care. So, Deadpool has been a book I've consistently enjoyed this year. Bi-monthly, $2.99 title. A lot of fun. This is the first Deadpool book I've really read, so I don't have a lot to compare it to. Great combination of violence and comedy, and even some pretty good drama near the end, but I'll start with the first story arc. So basically you have Deadpool
hired by Shield to go around killing resurrected American presidents because it would look too bad in the media to see Captain America and the Avengers killing all these ex-presidents like Abe Lincoln and everything. So a lot of fun, pretty funny. Brian Posehn and Jerry Dugan are the writers. They're actual comedy writers. So one thing I find, like, writing funny characters are the best, but it is hard for writers to be funny consistently. There's a lot of unfunny people in comics because they're more into dramatic writing or whatever. So when you get like a dramatic writer trying to like get Spider-Man or Deadpool to be making jokes, they just fall flat a lot of the time. But I find this series is really funny. Not just like the one-liners and everything from Deadpool, but everything just in the background. They'll have random stuff like Checkers here getting his guts ripped out, ex-president's dog. Tony Moore is the artist of Walking Dead fame. So obviously he knows how to draw violence and gore. The first story was pretty good. It ended up with Agent Preston, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent hired to sort of deal with this situation. She ends up stuck in Deadpool's head, and because of this crazy patriotic necromancer guy, and we move on from there. So following the first story arc with the presidents, we got into a few of these throwback issues, which sort of did the job of placing Deadpool in the Marvel Universe back in the day before he was actually created. These are really funny issues. I was kind of not too into them when I first saw it. I thought it was a weird idea. But as you read them, they're really funny. Like, he gets hired by this demon to get Iron Man drunk in this one, who is struggling with his alcoholism and all depressed. So he shows up and he's trying to get him drunk. It's pretty good, and he ends up outsmarting the demon in the end and doing the right thing. But really funny, these sort of throwback issues. There's a couple other random ones, just sort of small one-time adventures where he's working along with this demon. There's a Superior Spider-Man team-up, which wasn't too bad. In this one, Daredevil shows up, and what's his name? Power Man. And in this one, he joins Heroes for Hire, which is really funny. And he ends up hooking up with a sugar mama, and unbeknownst to him, impregnates her, and it turns out he has a child out there somewhere. Sometimes your past comes back to haunt you, and it's dressed like a pimp. So he keeps trying to imply that he's working with Heroes for Hire, but they keep raging and saying, "You don't work with us. We don't know who you are. Screw off." And Power Man hates him so much. It's pretty funny. And this sets up to a more serious story arc, which I thought was the best one of the year. And I'll show you it right now. So issue 15 kicked off the good, the bad, and the ugly story arc. Wolverine being the bad, Captain America the good, Deadpool the ugly. Which was, I think, one of the best story arcs of this year. Hands down. Basically what happens is he turns out Deadpool's been being knocked out and researched for the last few years, and he doesn't remember whenever it happens. But he's able, with the help of Agent Preston, to figure out what's happening and track down who's been doing research on him, and it's sort of remnants of the Weapon X program. And he tracks it down to North Korea, where he finds these sort of Deadpool clones of himself and the X-Men in the concentration camp type place in Korea. So he hires on the help of Captain America and Wolverine, who show up to help him out in North Korea and help find his daughter, help find out what's going on, because it turns out he had a daughter and that wife, and they were kidnapped as like a motivation to keep him in line if necessary. And it's really interesting how it all works out, and these different X-Men clones, and some of these These covers are beautiful. I like this. It's like the Korean propaganda poster. Um, and he kind of goes into this really dark space for Deadpool, as I guess he has in the past. But it has its moments that are funny, but it's definitely a more serious tone, and I think that's really good. I think one of the hardest things to do in writing is write something that's funny, but you can still take it seriously. Like, there's a lot of comedy writers and stuff who write these stories that are so ridiculous and over the top, but can't really bring anything else besides just some silly laughs. When, like, Shaun of the Dead is an example I find where Shaun of the Dead has some really serious moments and intense moments where you care about the characters and what's happening to them, but it's also really funny and ridiculous as it's going. I think Deadpool's kind of similar. So this was definitely a great, great arc. And if it comes out in trade, guys, I definitely suggest you check it out. If you're kind of not a fan of the Deadpool stuff because he's too ridiculous, you'd probably still enjoy this one because it's not really about that. So Deadpool has definitely been a great series. I'm definitely going to keep picking it up coming to the next year. And you should too. At least as long as the Posen and Dugan keep writing it there. So that's all I got to say about that. What else we got? So Hinterkind is a Vertigo title, basically merging fantasy, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic future type stuff. Basically humanity's sort of on the brink of extinction after some major thing has wiped them out. You don't really know what at first. And fairy tale creatures are showing up all over the place. And it turns out they've actually been real and were just hunted to the brink of extinction by humanity back in the day. So some of them want revenge on humanity, some want to help them, and then there's also some interesting mutated leftovers of humanity as well. The Earth has kind of been overrun with greenery and nature, and it's wild. We follow the story of this girl here who's sort of an archer chasing her grandfather who's going out to look up what's happened to another settlement far away where they lost contact with them. She kind of goes along with her gay best friend type guy who it turns out has a big tail, like a big like a rat tail, I guess. And so he's maybe the next step of human evolution in some sort of hybrid species. So yeah, it's kind of a cool book. I write and I had some very similar ideas to this. So when it came out, I was like, oh man, like it's already been done. But no, it's been pretty good so far. It's pretty epic in scope. So it's been tough because the first 3 or 4 issues here have been there's a lot of different parties and a lot of different groups, and it's hard to kind of keep track of who's who and who's with who and who's working with who. In like 4 issues, we already got 5 or 6 groups, but they've kind of also been building up a bit of a history and explaining the universe. So these kind of stories, you have to give a little bit of a chance, I think, to get their footing and establish themselves. So again, it's a $2.99 book, so I don't have too much of a short leash on that. So I'll probably keep getting it for the next few issues and see where they go with it. The art's okay, like it's kind of got that sort of sketched, not totally complete style, but I don't mind it, and the world's kind of neat, and there's some interesting creatures and stuff and characters so far. So that's one of the sort of more recent titles I've been picking up. From Image Comics, Rocket Girl, awesome book, love it, just love it. I don't know if this is supposed to be a miniseries or ongoing, but I'm really enjoying this one so far. It's basically about this girl. She's part of the teenager police force and she comes from the future to shut down an invention that's going to be invented that will put this one company basically in control of the entire world. It's interesting, like it seems ridiculous, like having a teenager, but she gets sort of in trouble with the real police, and it sort of explains why they have teenager cops, because nobody trusts adults because they're all corrupt and they all are terrible at their jobs and they're jaded and they don't care. So she's really well trained. She's always there to help. It's just a really positive, fun book. She sort of exists amongst this jaded world where she's really positive and has hope and wants to make the world a better place, which is sort of like the classic science fiction is all about looking ahead and looking at all the amazing things we can do. But it's stuck in this jaded world, which is kind of what our world feels like sometimes, where everybody's negative and pessimistic and everything's end of the world, doom and gloom type stuff. So no one really knows what to do with her because she's so hopeful and positive. But the book's really good. It's a lot of fun. Image. It's a $3.50 title. I counted the pages on this last one, and it was only had 18 pages. So I don't know if they've all been like that. So per page, it's actually still fairly expensive, but it's a good enough book that it's worth it for me. Wild Blue Yonder, an IDW miniseries. Another pretty good one. Kind of post-apocalyptic future again. But this one it's more built around dogfighting and planes and fuel. It's sort of like a water world type idea, but in the sky. The Earth is sort of destroyed. They've used up so many of the resources and everything. And this ship that they fly is sort of this legendary plane that it's solar powered, so it doesn't use any fossil fuels, so it can really just run forever if it needs to in the sky. And they have these sort of rocket packs and things that they use to fly around to defend it. They fly around in rocket packs and with axes and stuff. So this girl Soda hires a guy to be a gun, they call them early on. So a guy who will fly around on a rocket to defend the ship. So my issue with this and a lot of these sort of indie titles, it's IDW, but it's still an indie writer and stuff, is they just take forever to come out sometimes. Like, I don't know why, if it's like IDW puts them back or if the books just aren't finished yet and ready so they don't release them or what, but like it's really hard to get into a story when they're not coming out regularly. I've noticed with some of the newer ones, they'll do, like Rocket Girl did that, where the first 2 weeks had issues back to back. So it's nice because you can just pick it up, get into the story, kind of get hooked, and then you're willing to wait the next month. But like, I think they got 3 issues out now, and I've just been waiting and waiting, and I want to see where this story's going because it hasn't really gone too far yet, but it just takes so long. So that's the frustrating thing with these indie titles. It's nice because I like them. I like different ideas. I like people trying different things, but you know how it goes when, like, if the books just aren't coming out on time, then it's just not going to work. I don't know. It's frustrating, right? But yeah, so those are some of the indie titles I picked up this year. Going to keep checking them out. So Invincible was probably one of my favorite titles of the year. I've started reading Invincible this June, actually, when I went commercial fishing, and I downloaded the first 50 issues onto my tablet, and I read it as I was fishing, and really fell in love. It's a great series to work through kind of from the beginning, and I don't think Robert Kirkman would mind if you went and downloaded the first issues so that you can read up, catch up, and pick it up from where it is now, because it's really been a great series and has never really slowed down, in my opinion. The great thing about Invincible, it's a lot kind of like the Ultimate Universe, in that the whole universe is built and shaped by Robert Kirkman. So you have a really solid vision of how everything works and all the different characters. And he had a few little spin-off series that didn't work, but you see the characters randomly, and they show up in different issues. And the universe as a whole is really fun and interesting. And he's one of these guys who knows how to combine drama and comedy and action and fun. So it's serious from sometimes, but it's not always. The tone kind of shifts as it goes. But really great series, and I suggest you guys pick it up. So what happened this year, to catch you guys up to speed? Started out with the apparent death of Mark Grayson in January, Invincible himself. Turned out that this was faked by Dinosaurus, who they kind of had come to the end of their relationship, and Dinosaurus and him both decided that Dinosaurus needed to die. So in a really powerful image, Mark basically walks into where he is, and he walks out with blood on his hands, and you know it's done. You never really see it happen. So who knows? He could make another appearance, I guess, potentially if he also faked it. But um, pretty good into that story. That relationship was really interesting. It was about Mark trying to deal with how to really help the world. Is it easier to help by allowing certain evils to happen, like dinosaurs destroys Las Vegas, so this giant solar panel array can be built, which then helps a whole bunch of other people, way more people than Las Vegas would have helped. So Mark has to sort of deal with that question of how do you really help the world, and what's the best way to be a superhero, and this is sort of how that whole question comes to fruition. So we moved on to find out what happened with the Viltrumites. So this guy was the leader of the Viltrumites, and him and all the remnants of the race, who there's very few left, kind of hung out on the Earth of the Moon in their crashed ship, and were trying to infiltrate the Earth. But it turned out that much like Omni-Man was changed by the people of Earth, so were all the other Viltrumites. So they all started becoming fond of Earth and falling in love and enjoying the world, and sort of starting to shift. We also found out that Mark and his father, Omni-Man, were the remnants of a former king, so now, conveniently, Omni-Man is now the king of all the Viltrumites, and he's the leader. So he's going to do things a little bit different than they traditionally have. We saw Angstrom Levy return, who's Invincible's biggest villain. He can kind of create portals and travel through time and space and into different dimensions. And not through time, sorry, just into different dimensions. But he returned, and he was going to kill Mark's girlfriend, who kind of convinced him that maybe Mark's not to blame for everything. Because originally he wanted to do good, and Mark kind of broke in to break up what the experiment he was doing with some other villains, and there's a terrible accident, and he ended up getting all maimed and blamed Mark for it. So right as his girlfriend was convincing him to maybe forgive Mark or move on, he got attacked by another version, an evil version of Invincible from a different dimension, who pulled him in, and Mark Grayson kind of got obsessed with finding him again to save him, or finish him. We don't really know what Mark's total intentions are, but he's worried about him coming back and causing problems. So he is Robot trying to build another dimensional portal so that he can get there and find Angstrom Levy and finish the job. You also get some more interesting story about her, Monster Girl, and their time when they're in the other dimension with her husband, the robot guy, Rex. Continues to be interesting working through their drama. The great thing with Invincible is each character could really, if they need to, hold an issue up on their own. Robert Kirkman said that specifically, that's his goal, is to keep in-depth, interesting characters that can hold their own. Because Mark is really mostly just like an everyman. There's nothing really super unique about who he is. He's just sort of your normal guy. He's likable. I like the character and everything, but the cast surrounding him is really good and really interesting in their own right. So definitely worth reading if you guys aren't reading this. Read some of the back issues and pick it up because it looks beautiful. He has this really cool cartoony style, but it's a beautiful cartoony style, and he mixes action and violence and interesting characters and villains really well. Ryan Otley is the artist now, and it's a $2.99 book. So guys, do yourself a favor if you like superheroes and stuff. I think you'll really enjoy this book. So check it out. That's that. So we started out the year with Batman, Death of the Family story arc. Got a lot of mixed reviews. I actually really enjoyed it. I think the big issue with Death of the Family was how it finished. Everyone was expecting a death, and because it didn't happen, people were kind of felt cheated. Like it was building up to something epic, and it didn't really deliver. But what happened was the way the Joker did everything he did sort of turned Batman's family against him. And as you see it in the last issue, how he really did kill the family in the sense that Batman lost a lot of support and trust from these people because of how everything went down. So basically it turned out that Joker was claiming that he knew everybody's identity. and he had snuck into the Batcave and figured out who Batman was, Bruce Wayne, and solved it and was gonna like tell everybody or do whatever he wanted with it. So everyone sort of lost trust in Batman. And it turned out that Batman had, in fact, gone as Bruce Wayne to visit Joker, who didn't even turn a blind eye to him, because really at the end of the day, Joker doesn't care who Batman is. He has absolutely no interest in who Batman is. He doesn't want to know. So he had a blank list really in the end, because he prefers Batman as Batman. To him, that's the real person. So he doesn't care about the alternate personality. And this ended up damaging the family quite a bit because they all got kidnapped. He pretended to cut off all their faces, which he didn't do. To me, that was the biggest sort of letdown with this, is that I don't see the Joker sort of kidnapping people and doing it half-assed, because he could have done tons of damage, kept them alive, and cut off all their faces, and it would have been fine. So that was sort of the biggest thing, I think, that Joker just sort of pretended to hurt them and then didn't. But maybe Joker likes the face removed himself. Maybe that's his calling card. He doesn't want to give it to anyone else. Because you see in one of the mini stories in the back that he was going to do it to Harley Quinn, but didn't really do it. But she was a little scared of him. This issue 18 is the follow-up after the death of Damian Wayne. And I think this is really what a big part of what hurt Death of the Family. I wasn't reading any other issues, so I didn't even know about Damian Wayne, and I was trying to figure out what was happening as I was reading this. Because Batman, we go from here, where all the different characters in the Batman family don't want to see Batman, are upset with him, don't want to meet, including Damian. And in this one, we have just Batman raging and beating people down, and that girl Harper is sort of has to help him find his way back and help him through the grieving process, because he's working so hard and fighting so hard and so messed up. Now, I thought this was because of what happened in the Batman family, or the Death of the Family story originally, but he was reacting to something that happened in a different story. So it sort of screws up the whole, everything that happened from the Death of the Family story. It sort of took its impact away because we were automatically distracted by this other storyline. So I think something happened with Grant Morrison and he got upset with DC, or there was a falling out, and he has a tendency to kill off his characters, which is fine. Like, that's sort of one of those writers' mantras, you kill off your beauties. So, like, I can understand that if he was going to be done on Batman and Robin, that he would want to finish Damian. But, yeah, it was kind of disappointing because I did think this was a really good story, and I didn't think I think this whole distraction really hurt sort of the reception of Death of the Family. A lot of people didn't like Death of the Family, though. They felt a little cheated. It would have been nice maybe to see something of lasting impact, but I think the idea was it was supposed to really hurt the family as a whole, and Batman was going to have to deal with that, and then we were going to move on. And then what happened was, as we're in now with the year one, we jumped back in time, so now we still don't get to see the ramifications of what happened in this story. There was a couple issues between, but I'm going to talk about year one in a minute. And it's important, I think, to note that Scott Snyder didn't want to do year one. He did an interview and he talked about how DC was like, this is happening. You're going to do kind of this early Joker story, or Red Hood, whatever you want to call it. And then you can just put your whatever stories you had planned, you can put them into this current year one timeline. So the story he's doing now with Dr. Death and the Riddler, I guess, were supposed to be normal stories, but they're kind of put into the year one. So a lot of people get annoyed with Scott Snyder for writing a year, like a prequel, because it's been done so many times, but it wasn't really his choice. But let's get into that. So I just realized I was calling it year one before in the last clip there. 0 year, I meant to say. I was talking about 0 year. So 0 year, we jump back to when Batman was 25, I think, in his early days. And we see kind of a little bit about the retelling of the Red Hood story, as well as, I love this cover, sort of Batman being forged. It's beautiful, really clever. yeah, so you see some backstories about sort of what helped develop Batman and who he is. The black cover, thought this was kind of rip off. It's not really anything even happening. Um, in the background was an extra dollar. Um, but you get some the most interesting, I think, stuff from this series so far has been some of the discussions with Alfred and Batman, and Alfred, who loves Batman, learning to cope with him going on living this reckless life, this dangerous life for what he believes in, and early days Alfred trying to talk him out of it and just not being able to convince him, and them having some pretty serious and sometimes heavy, angry discussions about it. So yeah, I thought the 0 Year was okay so far. I almost got to go through and read these again because he is going kind of for an epic feel. It sort of seems like, so there's a lot going on. Like right now, there's a Riddler story along with the Doctor Death story at the same time. Focus. So it's been pretty good, but you really have to pay attention. I think some of the best things in these ones are actually the end stories. The last couple pages they add a couple stories. One of my favorite ones is where he's in a pit and he's fighting all these different guys in his early days training, and he just has to fight and fight and fight, and he never gives up. And there's another one about him, I can't remember what it was exactly, having to take apart or break out of some trap door before he drowned or died or something. I can't remember. It was really good. Clearly it didn't leave that much of an impact on me. But yeah, so this is the year one stuff, which is coming to an end soonish, I believe. But yeah, not too much to say about it. It's okay. They're just more okay Batman stories. Nothing super mind-blowing. I like what they've done with Dr. Death. I like this bone stuff he gives the guys, and their bones just jab out of them and they get all exploded and they look like these sort of bone trees. I think that's pretty neat. Pretty sinister. Very Batman style villain. But yeah, that's all I gotta say with Batman. East of West is an indie title I've been picking up. I actually bought the first 5 issues in a kind of a chunk, so I was able to read them all in a row, which is really helpful because it is kind of confusing. It definitely is. It has an epic scale and a lot of characters and a lot of different things going on. I got this because I was just eager from some sci-fi, and I heard mixed reviews, so I kind of came in not expecting too much. It is a really beautiful book, basically about the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse, kind of showing up as children in a future Western civilization, and death, I guess, is the closest thing, one of the 4th Rider of the Apocalypse, closest thing to a hero, as he fell in love with a very violent woman, daughter of a Chinese warlord, and decided he didn't want the world to end because he was in love. So my hardest thing with this book is there isn't a real protagonist, so there's a lot of sort of negative characters, like messy, ugly characters, which normally I like, but it's nice every once in a while to get a little bit of a brush of some positivity every once in a while. So after the original 5 issues, which is the first trade that came out, this issue right here introduced a character, this guy here. What he's wearing is like what the judges who sit in the judging seats wear, and there's this really corrupt judge who was ignoring this guy's pleas for justice, and he finally lost it, killed him, stole the mask with a few other cops. They all killed some other corrupt judges and went across the wilderness, kind of giving their own righteous judgment. So it felt like more of a kind of wild western cowboy hero, I guess you could say. He isn't totally like a hero. He's more of an anti-hero, but it was nice to have someone who you can kind of root for in this book. Because even Death, you're kind of like, he's Death, though. He like loves this woman because she's so good at killing so many people. But if you're into that like horror style stuff with not a lot of positivity, then you'll probably really like this series. This issue, this guy gets this messed up monster on his arm, which is pretty good. Yeah, so it's worth checking out. It's kind of political. It's science fiction. It's topical. It's religious. It's a whole bunch of things wrapped into one book. And yeah, a really nice looking book inside. The panels and everything look really good. But that's all I gotta say about that one. But worth checking out if you're into sci-fi and horror, I would say, even and Western stuff. It's not bad. I think it's gonna continue to pick up. I hope. So Saga continued. Definitely still one of my favorite series, even though Brian K. Vaughan has sometimes an annoying way of letting the story grind to a halt. But the world is so interesting and unique and wild and wonderful that you don't mind too much because the characters are just so interesting and the worlds and the creatures that you come upon are so interesting as well. I want to show you something because he's kind of been stepping back from this, but for the first while he had this shtick where the first page would always be really shocking or strange or something to really like grab you. And like, just look at those creatures. This blows my mind, these things. And Fiona Staples, she does all the art, so she does the drawing and coloring. I don't know if she paints it or does it digitally or how it all her style works, but she just brings this world to life. I truly believe the comics are a completely 50-50 type art form. You know, like a great comic with terrible art is just really difficult to read. Great writing with terrible art, but and a book with great art but that's just terrible to read is also almost unreadable. And I've tried to think about this as you hear some of these debates of the classic guys like the Stan Lees and the Jack Kirbys and these debates these guys got into whose characters who's responsible for making something successful or not. I really truly believe it's a 50-50 split a lot of like 90% of the time. There are stories like into this Mobius guy. If you guys have ever seen Mobius's work, his stories aren't that good, but his art is just beautiful. So any success of some of the stuff he created is based more on the art. But he also, like, his writing wasn't that good, so some of the stuff he combined with writing, like, is a big reason why it was successful. So I don't know. Comics are all about the team ups, and sometimes you hear between artists and writers, and sometimes you hear about like, oh, who's your favorite artist or who's your favorite writer, but it's so hard to say because it's more how those two work together. Because like some artists might fit really well for one type of story, but just not at all for another. Some might have a really simplistic style art, like a bone art, but it just fits. Superman Unchained. So I always want to like Superman, but I never really have liked too many Superman stories. But that all changed with this series. I've really enjoyed it so far. I love Scott Snyder, and Jim Lee's art, of course, is phenomenal. So really good combo of a couple great talents there. The thing with this series I thought was kind of... He took a similar approach as he did with Batman, in that what he did was he created this character that was always there behind the scenes that Superman didn't know about. So that's this guy Wraith. And in Batman, that was sort of similar to what happened with the Court of Owls. It's this threat that it's always been there that somehow just went unnoticed. So I thought it was a bit formulaic, but that said, I like Wraith. He's a bit different in that he actually like really respects Superman and he looks up to him, but you see different ideologies. So where sometimes Superman's sort of portrayed as America's errand boy, like in The Dark Knight Returns. In this, he's not. He sort of stands for what he thinks is right, where Wraith is the guy who works for those behind the scenes to sort of help the American way or this military industrial power. So yeah, it's been really good. Some great action, really cool. You get to actually hear Superman's thoughts bubbles, which doesn't happen as much with Superman, which is pretty interesting in how he solves problems. Issue 1 here, you had a sweet fold-out poster. I don't know if any of you guys pulled it out. Maybe you got 2 issues. This number one and number 2, I think, were the highest selling comics of that month. There's a website called Comicron. If you look it up on Google, it's got some interesting stuff. Tells you what the sales numbers are for different books and things. But yeah, I've been really enjoying the story. There's a lot going on. Like this Lex Luthor kind of thing showed up randomly, but you don't see how he's connected with the major arc. Maybe they're doing a bit of layering of story arcs, which I actually like. So maybe once this Wraith story arc is done, it'll jump to a Luthor story arc. But yeah, I've really been enjoying this book. The dialogue's great. That's one thing I really like with Snyder is his dialogue. And really enjoying this series and excited to see where it goes throughout the next year. So if you're not reading a Superman book and looking for one, I think this is probably the one to go with. But that's just my opinion. Another okay series here featuring Superman, Batman and Superman by Greg Pak and Jay Lee. I really liked this first issue. I love the relationship with Superman and Batman. They're kind of doing an alternative universe type thing where back in the past, their first meeting, and you see how they help this child in 2 different ways, and you hear both their thought bubbles and how they're similar and how they're different. And it's pretty interesting. And I actually thought this was a really beautiful book and really interesting way of telling the story and a more surreal art style, which is kind of neat as a change. But as it went on, I found it just really confusing. I had a hard time knowing what was going on from panel to panel. So I think with Jay Lee, I'm just more. I think he would be good more in like one-shot random issues, and I think he's done now. I think on issue 4 he took over, or actually issue 5 he stepped back. But I kind of got confused about where everybody was and what was happening because he just sort of has these general, like backgrounds, colorful backgrounds. So maybe I'm just dumb and you have to read it slower and pay more attention or something. But I kind of got annoyed with it by the end. But the first book, I was so floored by how cool it was. So I don't know. I dropped this book though now, just because it's another $3.99 title. You know, I only got so much money, and I thought it was okay. It was kind of getting into crystals and magic, and this magical crystal super weapon that could be the death of Superman and everything else. To me, it wasn't interesting me that much, the story and where it seemed like it was going. So yeah, it was all right, but not good enough to stick around for. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles continued to impress. We started the year with the Turtles heading into Dimension X and visiting with the Neutrinos to help them in their war against Krang and his armies who were taking over. They were a pivotal part, of course, of winning the war against Krang, or at least a major battle, with the help of the Turtles and Fugitoid. Wasn't the most exciting arc for me, but the art picked up. Definitely, these, like you can see in some of these covers, they look really cool. There was some really bad art ahead of this story arc, so I was happy to see that get replaced. And even following this, there was a mini-series called The Secret History of the Foot Clan, which was drawn by this artist, Matthias Santaluca, who I think is just amazing. He really brought it out, and I think we'll probably be seeing him around a little more. So remember that guy's name, Matthias Santaluca. Following the Neutrino War, We got City Fall, where Shredder and a whole bunch of other gangs came together and had a massive war. We had Bebop and Rocksteady introduced, who were really funny. I was really surprised at how well they did. As this was going on, there were micro series for each of the villains. So we had a Shredder one, which was okay. We had Bebop and Rocksteady. We had the Arctic Fox and a few others. The Hun was another one who turned out to be Casey's dad. So there's some interesting stuff. What they do with this series is they take a lot of the old stories and things that have been around from like manifestations of the Turtles. So whether it's the TV shows or the movies or different comic series, so they bring all those good things together and they make a new story. So it's pretty interesting. And the City Fall was a really good storyline. Leonardo gets his mind taken over by Shredder, sort of hypnotized, and he thinks his mother is telling him to fight against the Turtles, and he doesn't really know who he is or what's going on. And so he's sort of Shredder's second in command for a while there, and the Turtles have to rescue him. And even now, we're still seeing the ramifications of what happened there as Leo is suffering, and he doesn't trust his brothers yet, and he doesn't know who he is or what's going on. So it's nice to see a little bit of interesting development like that with the Turtles. Yeah, pick it up. So coming off the Kick-Ass 2 movie, Kick-Ass 3 started coming out, which I decided to pick up. I read Kick-Ass 2. I didn't actually read Kick-Ass 1, but I read Kick-Ass 2, and so I figured, yeah, let's keep going with it. It's a kind of a cool, interesting, different take on it. It's funny though, the more I read John Romita Jr. stuff, the less I like his style. Maybe I've just seen too much of it with a bunch of the back issues of Spider-Man and stuff I've been reading, but I don't know, he's starting to bug me, his style a little bit. I don't like it. I don't like how he does shading. I don't know. But it's a $2.99 book, so I try to have a lot more grace on these $2.99 books because I want to support $2.99 titles. And I've been counting pages too lately just to see what I'm actually getting for $2.99 or $3.99 because I like the idea of getting a 20-page book, 20 to 21 pages for $2.99 is what I like. So Kick-Ass 3 kind of continues on with Dave Lazuski as Kick-Ass, trying to figure out next as he's defeated Red Mist, who's in a hospital bed now. His mom is contemplating killing him, and he is having some troubles with the team and different people who are kind of more posers as superheroes. And Hit Girl, of course, is still in jail. She's basically taken over the jail in there because the guys all chickened out when they went to break her out and try to rescue her. But they've all been, so the whole team's been taking advantage of all her equipment and all her stuff and just letting her rot in jail. So we'll see if she comes out super pissed, but she's basically taken over. This guy is the grandfather of Red Mist. I forget his name, Genovese, I think. And he's kind of a gay pedophile mafia leader who's come back from Italy to retake the city and is pretty ruthless. So they've been having a bit of a gang war with the mafia guys as well as within the ranks of the superheroes themselves. Kick-Ass also gets a girlfriend and has sort of been having so much sex with his girlfriend that he doesn't want to go and do any superhero stuff, which is kind of funny because the whole idea with Kick-Ass is what if real people tried to be superheroes? And he kind of comes to this conclusion, he's like, oh, no wonder real people won't be superheroes. They're too busy getting laid all the time. So it's pretty funny. And then you have these guys who are like corrupt cops who are working for Genovese, who got tired of his sort of ruthless ways, and since they know everything where all these bad guys are and the meetings are, they put on masks of their own and started going around killing all these mafia guys. But because of that, now Genovese is saying, you know what, go out and kill any masked people on the street. Anyone in a mask, I want them dead. So a lot of the team and different guys you've got to know have been killed. So yeah, it's going okay. It's a pretty good book, I guess. Nothing super mind-blowing, but I've enjoyed it, and I'll finish it off, and hopefully it comes out with a good ending. Not too built around shock factor, but something somewhat intelligent. Shocking's okay, but I like intelligent more.